Okay, so back to the Nakud of the Maamar. So there's a lot going on, right? But always, you have to remember who's the main character, right? Who's the main character in the Maamar? Huh? Who? You
What?
You saying for the main character?
No, for after.
Teves.
Yeah. That's the whole Haggard.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. Mendel, try to play along for a bit, yeah. Right, so who's the main character over here? Oh, you're Insaf. Right, that's a cheap shot. It's a Chlamay on the kids Mata Din Tachlis, right? Either in there in Seif Gofe. Who's the Eitzer? Which dark is the Eitzer?
Who's the main character of the Eitzer?
Who's the Eitzer?
The man on the cats.
Which is?
Huh?
Huh?
Which other words do you want?
No, so it's Etzem Oyer. Yeah? Etzem Oyer. Right? Right, there's the Etzem Oyer and the Spashtus Oyer. And the Spashtus he calls Lamata Adin Tachlis, and the Etzem Oyer is Lamayla Adin Ketz. Now, it's always from the Maamar and wie the Maamar matert sich, right, that are trying to get a better grasp upon him, as we see in the Maamar through the mashal, right? And we spoke about this last week that the whole focus of this sif is really the mashal. The nimshal betzim is the next sif. Here we make a whole zach from the mashal, and that itself is the point the Maamar is trying to bring out. That in a way the mashal is not just like, in order to understand Chassidus, so you need some mishalim. And ultimately, the vote is to get to the nimshal. But something unique we see in this Maamar is that in a way there's a mile in the mashal over the nimshal. Let me use some different oisius to bring it out that actually connects to this Maamar. Right, so we speak over here about Lamata Din Tachlis and Lamayla Din Ketz. Or it says Lamayla Din Tachlis. So if in Klali, what is Lamayla Din Ketz Mata Din Tachlis? In other words, what's the Tenua? So that itself in Chassidus you have conflicting ifanim. But in the Mahalach Basi Legani and similar Maamarim, so lemata adin tachlis is what? Is gilui, right? I mean the skala. What does lamata mean? Further below. In other words, here's the gilui, and it could go even to the lowest worlds, the lowest people, etc. Lamayla adin ketz is that it's nis'ala, right? There's this his almos lack of gilui. In other words, it's like almost like somebody there's a koyach that a person has to express themselves. And then there's the koyach that a person has to hold back. There's holding yourself back. There's lack of expression. And that itself is, right, in a way, every person has it. There's the part of us that wants to connect and express ourselves even to the furthest places. And then there's always a part of a person that you want to, this is personal. Like, what happened? Guys want to tell you. You ever try to get a yichidus out of a guy? It's like a whole maternish. So sometimes the guy's just like trying to get you to, make him crazy. But sometimes there's very personal things in a person's life. You don't even discuss, right? Certain things are hella. So we have ideas, and sometimes we try to express those ideas. So sometimes the ideas aren't so deep and aren't so complicated, so you just tell it over to somebody. Somebody says, give it other words for it, explain it in simpler language, and it works out well. But then there are times that you have to bring a mashal for an idea. Why do you have to bring a mashal? Why can't you just say over the idea as is? Say it in simpler words. Give a more basic hasbara. You don't have to go into all the mefarshim. Say Pashat Rashi Teves. Why do you have to bring a mashal? So what's the hasbara? Why do you bring a mashal? Because sometimes the ein aroich of the mashpia to the mekabel, the rab to the talmud, is so great that no matter how many oisias, how many words, and how many hasbaras the rab will give, the idea is it's too aloof, it's too complicated, it's too removed from the talmud's world. So what do you have to do then? You have to. It's not enough to have oirech, right? This oirech, roichem and oimek. Oirech usually means to bring an idea down, to give it simple terms. It's not going to help, because any terms you'll give are still too removed from the makabel. Rather, you have to leave the world of the mashpia, leave the nimshal, and bring a mashal, right? Forget about what I'm thinking. Let me enter your world, your space, and bring you an example from something that you relate to, right? So you're trying to explain it in Chassidus. The guys never really learn Chassidus, but they're into science, or they're into building, or they're whatever it is. Yes, you'll bring them a mashal from building. Now, the Eibusher when the Eibusher created the world, he's not exactly using steel, and he doesn't have a contractor, and right, and all that. But you're entering another world, a world of sort of different ideas, of different kalim, to connect to them and be able to bring down your idea to them. So mashal is very often the ultimate dogma brought in Chassidus for lamata adin tachlis. There's lamata, and there's lamata adin tachlis. I could bring an idea down by giving it simpler words, but there ultimately, even however simple I explain it, it has to be someone that could somewhat understand the concept that I'm speaking about. But if I want to bring it to lamata adin tachlis, to a completely new space, a completely new world, and people that don't relate to anything I'm saying, and the whole framework of ideas that I'm discussing is not in their world, you have to bring a mashal from their place. So what's the mashal? Lamata adin tachlis. But what does the Maamar explain? What's mashal? What does mashal express? L'mayla adin ketz. L'mayla adin ketz. There's a now. What's mashal? Is l'mayla adin ketz? What wasn't l'mayla adin ketz? Verkehrt. I'm bringing. L'mayla adin ketz is the Rav l'chayra removing himself from the Talmud. Removing himself from the Talmud. Right. So l'dugma. What would be a dugma for that in a mashal Rav Talmud l'mayla adin ketz? So you have a mashal, which is actually, it's not brought in Chassidus so much, it's a mashal from Hillel Paritcher that Rebbe brings in the Sikha, and it's in Kut Sichas Chelik Beis, about Tisha B'Av. Right, the famous mashal. Rebbe speaks about the Churban Abayis, in a way, the Churban Beis HaMikdash, from a certain perspective, is the greatest Gilui. How could that be? How could the Churban be the greatest Gilui? You know the mashal? So Rebbe brings a mashal, there's a Rav teaching a Talmud, and the Rav's giving over great ideas to the Talmud. All of a sudden, in the middle of the Shiur, the Rav goes silent. He starts spacing out, and that's it. Talmud's asking questions, trying to catch his attention. Nobody home, he's not here. Now, you ask the Talmud what just happened. Helen. The Rav was speaking for an hour, giving a gavaldik inyan, and all of a sudden, he's silent. And I'm trying to engage with him, and he's disconnected. So what does the Talmud see? Helen. What's really going on? Why did the Rav zone out all of a sudden? Because he was giving over an idea, and all of a sudden a new idea occurs to him. A new idea, sort of like all of a sudden, like, while you're speaking, like, you think of a new idea, but the idea hasn't fully developed. So the Rav is silent for a bit to allow himself to develop the idea in his own brain. He's thinking it over, and once he'll have it figured out, then he'll give it over to the Talmud. So there's two stories going on here: mitzad the Talmud, mitzad the Rav. Mitzad the Talmud is the ultimate Helen. Mitzad the Rav is the ultimate Gilui, right? He's bringing in a greater Gilui to give over to the Talmud later. Now, in that case, so there I could understand what's going on. L'mayla adin ketz, the Rav is nichlal, nis'alim batzmo, so he stops engaging, stops speaking to the Talmud, goes into himself, and that's l'mayla, and that's helam achar helam, nis'alim, right? And then we could say that even then, when it's l'mayla adin ketz, but what's the ultimate goal? Helam b'shvil ha'gilui. The helam is not just for helam. Ultimately, to bring a greater gilui, like Simpson's shvil ha'gilui, helam is shvil ha'gilui. So there I see l'mayla adin ketz, that the Rav leaves the Talmud. On the one hand, and on the other hand, even this leaving the Talmud, silencing himself, is also in order to give the Talmud more, a greater gil. But here, if the Rav is giving over a mashal to the Talmud, l'chayr, he's being a scholar to the Talmud. He's allowing a Talmud that won't understand the nimshal to be involved by explaining to him a mashal. Right? So what's the l'mayla adin ketz over here? So there's 2 points here. So number one, if you're looking at a mashal, at the fact that the Rav could speak to a Talmud even that's so far removed from him and give him a mashal, fine, that might be an ending of gili. But when you actually look at what happens in the mashal, what's happening when the Rav gives over the mashal? The nimshal disappears. Right? There's no nimshal. He's not actually giving over the idea. Right? So let's say in the case of this Maamar, so we want to speak about etzem o'er and ispashtos o'er, which are inyanim and o'er insight, which are inyanim and alikos, which are ways that Hashem expressed himself. Okay, that's great. But then we start speaking about a Rav Talmud and how a Rav explains things to a Talmud with a mashal. So we're not talking about the Eibishter at the moment, Begilui. We're not speaking about Or Insoif. We're speaking of mashal. We're speaking in Seich. We're speaking of a relationship of Rav Talmud, not the Eibishter and the world, and not the Eibishter and Yidden. So there's a helam here that we're not actually engaging in the concept itself. we're leaving the world of Gilei Elikos, we're leaving the world of the Nimshal, we're shutting it down, we're closing it up, and we're going into a different world. So that's where there's a hell. But even that is not the point we're trying to get to. Because what's the point we're trying to get to? What we're trying to say is that it's not the pshat that so when a Rav gives over a mashal to the Talmud instead of the Nimshal, what's the Lamai Ladin Ketz? That there's Helim over here, and the Talmud has to suffice with the mashal. Like, that's all you could get. But the actual Gilui will be Nis Alim from you. We spoke about this last week. That would be, in a way, maybe the Vard from last year, from Siftes Vav. That what's Lamai Ladin Ketz? Helim. And even then, we want to say that Helim is for a greater Gilui, and Helim itself is the way of Hashem agreeing this down. That's not the Vard we're saying in this year's Sif. What are we saying here? What we're saying here is that there is a Gilui. The Gilui is in the Oifen of Helim. Which means over here, the Rav is giving over a mashal. The mashal is divorced from the Nimshal. It's like it's not the Nimshal. It's a different world. Comes the Maamar and says, not only does the mashal have in it the Nimshal, the mashal in a way has something deeper that the Nimshal itself doesn't have. There are things that the Rav can give over in the mashal that if he would give you the Nimshal, you wouldn't. It wouldn't have the whole Inyan. The Nimshal, in a way, is a greater Helim than the mashal.
Even the way the Rav himself understands it.
So those are the two layers in the Maamar, in the mashal, right? There is what's the sussum here? Is it in Yonim that the Talmud can't understand, or even that the Rav has a noifin of Helim? We'll get to that soon. We'll get to that later. And ultimately that's the big chiddush, and that's the big vart of the Sif. Sort of things that the Rav himself can't fully process, he gives over through the mashal. But let's go back to the Nimshal. Right, so what do we have here? So the Inyanim, so if we use the mashal, let's say the Inyanim that the Rav could sort of explain, just using speaking about the same concept, without leaving from the Nimshal to the mashal, speaking about the concept as it is before any other mashal, just using simpler terms, that would be sort of Lamata Adin Tachlis. Take an idea and bring it down. Explain it to a 5-year-old, explain it to a 2-year-old, explain it to a dummy, whatever. That would be Lamata Adin Tachlis. But you're explaining it, you're explaining the concept. L'mayla Adin Ketz, that would be the Spashtos. L'mayla Adin Ketz, which comes out in the mashal, that would be the Etzem Oyer. Right? So, like this. So, Oyer and Seif, Koydem HaTzimtzum. So in Oyer and Seif, because that's what we're talking about here, right? That it's Oyer and Seif VR is, which is basically Oyer, right? Not a gilui of Oyer and Seif, not a way Oyer and Seif expresses itself in different ways, but actually let's talk about Oyer and Seif on its own terms before it relates to anything outside of it. Oyer and Seif in its own space can sort of so in this Maamar it talks about being divided into two. More beprotius, and we know this from Basi Legani Yud Aleph, right in the beginning. Right, Maamar Amuzger to go derech hatzachos. Right, you all know Basi Legani Yud Aleph, right? The first Maamar. What's the first thing that Rebbe teaches in a Maamar Chassidus? The first Maamar. What's the first thing that Rebbe teaches? In Chassidus. What's the vart? Before the 3 dargos is at the bottom of the page, at the end of the Sif. The erste Zach that Rebbe teaches there is, as in Chassidus, Eventzev Umeret. Right? What's the line there? Shchina b'chol mokim lefi inyani. The Rebbe quotes the Friedrich Rebbe Basi Legani, the first few lines, and then the Rebbe gives a Hagdama. It's like before, we're going to have, there's a lot of Chassidus, thousands of Maamarim and Sichos. Here's the first Yesod. Shchina b'chol mokim lefi inyani. The Rebbe there brings all the Rebbeim in the first Sif, right? In the Basi Legani Yud Aleph, the Rebbe brings all the Rebbeim 4 times. From Yud Beis and on, the Rebbe brought from Baal Shem Tov till the Friedrich Rebbe. But that one, the Rebbe went from the Alter Rebbe till the Friedrich Rebbe, and then Shabbos, the Rebbe explained that Betsy wanted to start from Baal Shem Tov, but because by the Rebbe's Chasana, the Friedrich Rebbe brought from the Alter Rebbe on, the Rebbe didn't want to change from that, and on Shabbos, Shabbos Pagana, the Rebbe added the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. But but on the other hand, the Rebbe brought all 7 Rebbeim 4 times in the Maamar, plus the Maamar itself was split into three parts, and between the different parts of the Maamar, the Rebbe is saying the Nigunim of all the Rebbeim, so it's a 5th time. So that brings the 7 Rebbeim, the different dargis in Shechina, the 5 Rebbeim, before the Friedrich Rebbe. So the Rebbe Rashav brings it from Samach Vav, 3 dargis in Oyer and Seif. So there's Etzem Ha'oyer, Ispashtus Ha'oyer La'atzmoi, and Ispashtus Ha'oyer La'atzmoi is Shaykh L'zulas. In Ispashtus Ha'oyer itself is... Now, I think I might have said this last week, that sometimes L'mayla and Kismat Anitachlis is going on the 2 levels of Ispashtus Ha'oyer. But in Basi Legani, what's L'mayla and Kismat Anitachlis? Etzem Ha'oyer and Ispashtus Ha'oyer. So we put the 2 levels of Ispashtus Ha'oyer together, we don't really get into the Dakistik Chiluk in between. So on the one hand, when we say etzem ha'oyer, we're negating what? It's etzem ha'oyer and not ispashtus ha'oyer. But leidach, in the beginning of the Maamar, the Rebbe is also spending time to also differentiate it from something that's higher than it, which is yechoilus, right? That it's not yechoilus. Now, in general, all the dargis koydem at tzimtzum, the chilukim b'nei, we're talking about dakastik chilukim, like mamish, you know. It's like, in Chalal and Chassidus, everything's very dagastik. But Kedem at Tzimtzum, in Kabbalah, it says Kedem at Tzimtzum is our pashut, it's pshittus, it's Gilead Atzmus. It's not there's no concept of Chalukah and Esher spheres, that's all after Tzimtzum. So any Chalukah we took about Kedem at Tzimtzum, it's all relative. There's a famous letter where the Rebbe answers somebody, they ask, how could there be Chalukim and Dargis Kedem at Tzimtzum when L'cheira, it's Ur Pashut. Arizal says it's Ur Pashut. So it explains there's 2 answers there. One of them is that it's relative. Relative to Acharat Tzimtzum, it's Ur Pashut. Relative to Atzmos, it's not totally Pashut. Or another Nekuda, it depends how you look at it. You look at it, you could be Chitzoynius Inyan, you could go into the Chilukei Dargis, but Pnimius Inyan, they're all one point. They're all Gilead Atzmos. I'm not going to get into the Chilukim and the Pratim there. It's interesting in the Farbrengen of Yud Shvat, Tashon Chavav, this Farbrengen, which we call Akdam Klalis. You finish the Maamar, and you have some time, or even if you didn't finish the Maamar and you have some time, or even if you didn't finish and you don't have time, it's a very gishmaket Farbrengen to listen to. If you can't listen to it, you could learn it in Yiddish and Lashon Kodesh. And in general, you see this in the Yud Shvat Farbrengen the last few years. You see that a lot of the things that in the Maamar of the Farbrengen, the Basi Legani, are very askolodik or very dakustik, or very Leisis HaKabbalah. In the Farbrengen, the Rebbe gives it, the Rebbe sort of concretizes it and gives it oisius, gives it, if it's mishalim, if it's practical application to the Yon, the Rebbe speaks on the Maamar. So a lot of the Yon here in the Maamar, you look in the Farbrengen, you hear the Farbrengen, you hear a lot of the Yon. Some things the Rebbe very clearly connects it to the Maamar, and some things just from the Mahalach HaDvarim, you see that it's connected to the Maamar. You remind me at the end of the Shiur, so in case I don't get to all the Yonim. But one of the Yonim you see over here is the Rebbe speaks about the Friedrich Rebbe. And the Friedrich Rebbe was L'mayla and Kismat Anitachlis. On the one hand, the Friedrich Rebbe was very sehr gekocht in bringing Chassidus. And was a learning Chassidus, and even those that already learn Chassidus and learn English learn more, and should stay up all El Shishi. He says that the Gans El Shishi they should sit and learn, and that it doesn't say clearly. It seems to be the Indian of Lamata Adin Tachlis. In other words, there should be more and more Chassidus being the Skalan, Maamarim, etc., etc. On the other hand, the Rebbe says the Friedrich Rebbe spent a lot of time doing what? Writing Zechreinis. Well, there is that we know the Friedrich Rebbe said a lot of stories. The Friedrich a lot of stories. He wrote Zechreinis. The Rebbe says even though a Rebbe tut alt, and it's like you don't even know this, but then at the end of the day, while he's writing Zechreinis, he can't write a Maamar. You can't do both at the same time. So he took time off writing Maamarim and Sichos, and wrote Sefer Zechreinis, and he wrote Zechreinis from Sefer Zechreinis. It's stories for like Pashta Yidden in America. And what's the and how could so number one, why would he spend time? But also, how's the Shaykh do both kavim deal with Yidden that are already very, very deeply involved in the highest level, and manfun zay nachmer learn, nachmer davenin, and leidach deal with Yidden that you have to go and tell them the bist a Yid and bring them into Hebrew school, give them some stories to remind them about their Zayda, like very pashto. How can you do both in Yon? So the Rebbe says that Einach Hanami, when with Pashtos it seems like a stir or 2 different kavim. But because the Friedrich Rebbe was calling Yoni was Mesiras Nefesh, and the skashos of his Etzem and Neshama with the Etzem and Neshama of every Yid, so we said Etzem and Neshama, there's no, you could do everything. You do this, you do that. There's no, even when you're doing different Yonim, there are different kavim and different Yonim, they bring out one point. So al derech zeh would come out also. Let's when we come to Eir and Soif, when we talk about different targets in Eir and Soif, maybe when you look at the expression, it seems that you're seeing different sides over here, but really it's bringing out one point. It's Gilu Yatzim. It's an expression of Avtzon. Now back to the point. Now, so when we speak about etzem, so etzem ha'oyer and ispashtos oyer. So we say it's etzem ha'oyer, but it's not yicholos. Now, like I said, all these dargis, they're very, very dakustik chilukim. But between the dakustik chilukim itself, etzem ha'oyer and yicholos are maybe from the most. There's so many things, like you'll read a page that's being magdir in a Maamar Chassidus, that's being magdir etzem ha'oyer. You could find almost it's very similar ways as being magdir what yicholos is. And what's yicholos is etzem ha'oyer. Because both of them, what's the tzad ha'shavah between yicholos and etzem ha'oyer? The tzad ha'shavah is, it's sort of the beginning of oyer, but it's not actual oyer, right? There's no actual ispashus oyer. Let's say we have light. So light comes out of the moyer, right? So there's the moyer, there's the source of the light. So let's see right here, you have the light bulb, and you have light coming out of it. And then there's the light as it is kolul, right? As it's in its source. Every Indian starts from its makir, especially oyer. It comes from its source. So the oyer shemesh comes from the shemesh. Now, the oyer comes out of the shemesh. So where's the starting point of the oyer? If you have to give a starting point of oyer, where does oyer start? In the shemesh, in the sun, and from the sun it comes out. But however, when the light of the sun is kolul, is included within the sun, it's just part of the sun, right? It doesn't really have its own identity. So when we talk about the light of the sun included within the sun, and with the disclaimer that the Oyer Hashem Kol B'Shem is not exactly like Oyer Kol B'Moyer, because by the Eibusher it's a bit different, but just to bring out this point, are we talking about light, or is it light or it's the sun? Which one is it? Is it the Oyer or is it the Moyer? So that's sort of where it gets a bit tricky. So Sai Yechoiles and Sai Etzem Oyer are pretty much both speaking about the spashtos or the gilui, the way it's kolul in the etzem, in the source. So then, what's the difference between yicholos? What's the difference between yicholos and etzem ha'oyer? So in basic oisius, what's the starting point? Is the starting point the moyer, or the starting point is the oyer? In other words, is there a moyer? Uvemela it has oyer, or it's oyer as it's included in the moyer. Or if we speak about, let's say, from mitam, or if we talk about from the perspective of oyer, I don't exist, but I can exist, or I exist, but I'm completely but my mitzias is totally batal. Is the starting point bittul, or is the starting point is mitzias? They're both a mitzias that's batal. But is the starting point bittul, or is the starting point mitzias? So first of all, we're not talking about necessarily practical. Practical difference would... So let me just give it a little more oisius. Yechoiles, in general, we call it yechoiles ha'atzmas. There's an interesting... that Tzemach Tzedek writes in Derech Mitzvah, I think it's Shmuel Tefillah. He says that I found the Ksav Yad. There's a Ksav Yad from Isaiah, from Alter Rebbe, that it says that Koidem B'riyas Ha'olam Hayahu Shmoy Bilvad. This is going on. This is Yechoiles. This darg is Nikra Yechoiles. This is called Yechoiles because Koidem Shnei Ha'olam means before everything, before the tzimtzum, before there was ever a svara, like any mocking for the olam. So what Hayahu Shmoy Bilvad? Before anything was here, there was the Eibishter and Shmoy. Well, there was the Eibishter. That's it. The Eibishter is the only emes mitzias, right? Is not if sharas mitzias. Rather, he's mechuyev mitzias. Everything else can exist. Oyer. The Eibishter decided there should be oyer. If you didn't want there should be oyer, there wouldn't be oyer. If he wanted to create the world without oyer, he would have created without, right? Etc. Etc. Everything's just because he decided that way. Nothing has to exist. The only thing that has to exist is him. But when you say Hayahu Shmoy Bilvad, you're basically saying, no, something else has to exist. His name. Why would he exist with a name? And also, what does the name exist for? Why do we have names? So you can call me by my name. I don't have a name for myself. or I have a name for Chayas, but that's because I don't have my own Chayas. Was the Eibishter need a name? Before anything was Shaykh to exist, there was him and his name. What's his name doing here? So Hayahu Shmoi is him and Yechoilis. What's Yechoilis? Yechoilis is there's not the Eibishter himself. Is the Eibishter defined or limited in any way? No. So V'meila, he's a Kol Yachol. Everything is possible. Can he do this? Yeah. Can he do the opposite? Also, yeah. Not because he has any natiyah, not because he's driven in any direction, he has any connection to something outside of it, but because he is completely infinite, and he is completely undefined, and he is unlimited in any which way. So anything you'll ask, is it possible? Of course it's possible. So there's yichoylis lahoyer. There's a potential for light. But when we speak of potential, we don't mean potential as in like shitas beishamai, koyach and poyel, that something's already here in a potential form. Yichoylis is I exist. I is in the Eibishter, as in the Etzem. And because of the Etzem, because the Eibishter exists, everything is possible, including light, including darkness, anything. And that's why in Yichoylis you can't say, this is what the Rebbe says, you can't say there's two kavim. There's no light and darkness. There's no, what do we call it? Lamayla din ketz, lamata din tachlis, as two kavim, hefesh gadol b'neim, in Oriented. There's no two kavim in Atzmos. There's no two kavim. There's just him. And he can do anything. Lamayla din ketz, yeah, lamata din tachlis, weiter, yeah, either is stira, seder. So what? They both don't exist, and therefore they exist. Why could there be side lamayla and ketz and side lamata and tachlis? Because they're both not irrelevant. Because they're both not here, right? All there is Atzmos, is Avtzon himself. Or he can express himself in any way, right? Lahavdil of Aviyadol. You have somebody. You have three kinds of people. You have some people that play the game, some people that are against playing the game, and you have some people that the game is not Teves makim with them. Right? What's the game? There's different kinds of games, but there's the social game, right? So you have some people that their whole life revolves around how they relate with other people, how other people relate to them, etc., etc. And they're constantly making sure that they're believing in miskabil, and that they have friends, and that they don't step on anyone's toes, and there's big milas, and there's big chasaronis also, because you can't be yourself. Everything you do is like it goes around, it revolves around the social circles that you're in. Admu medini, in a very extreme way. Certain people are like Stock in Welt, no one's here. They're very much like, I do it my way, not your way. I don't care what anyone else says. Not only they don't care, they make sure that everyone knows that they don't care. Yeah, you have the same person, like far l'chaim and nach l'chaim, right? So l'chaim before, right? After l'chaim, a person can enter a space, and now we'll tanzen af tish. I'm going to show everybody as tight as their elam. But l'idach, when you're screaming tight as their elam, you're saying this is the elam, and it's tight, right? Like you're negating something. And then there's someone, so like, okay, there's nobody here, say there. There's a bunch of people in the room, also they say, there's nobody else, they can't be around other people, like they have social anxiety, they run away. So say there. There's other people here, I don't need people around me, but I don't care if there are people, right? It's irrelevant. The whole thing keeps done. So it's not that I could do side this way, side that way. Everything's irrelevant. The only thing is here, ich bin da, I'm here, I'm present. There's noise, good. There's no noise, weiter, good. So that's yichoylis. Yichoylis is you could exist because you don't exist. In other words, the zulas. In oir, it's verkehrt. In oir, there's oir here. There is oir. However, this oir is you call it the koyach hiyuli of the oir. It's the etzem of the oir. It's the starting point of that existence. And every single thing, if you break it down to its starting point, or its most subconscious plot, then it doesn't actually express itself. It's here, but it doesn't express itself yet. Well, I'll give up a dogma for that. Right? Before we get to the dogma, that's the chilik. In etzem oir, it's oir, but it's kolol in the moir. It hasn't found its own individual itself yet. It's still in its source. But it's already the gilui, it's already the zulas, the way it's in the makir. Mashenkin yichayles, we're talking about the etzem stays etzem, and because it's etzem, everything is potentially possible, including all different expressions of oir. But now when we speak about the etzem ha'oir, so it's oir, but however it's the etzem ha'oir. Right, so it's musber that in every gilui, and this obviously is after the tzimtzum for sure, but the chiddush is even kredim tzimtzum. These are the three levels in oir, etzem oir, spashus oir, the two dargis. So in every gilui, there are three stages, or three layers. Well, it's not actually stages that happen. It's three layers to that expression. So let's say in koyach zanefesh. Okay, so everyone here, Baruch Hashem, has a brain. Well, I don't want to assume, but let's. Okay, so there's the day-to-day when I'm actually using my head, I'm using my brain, in many different ways. Then, as I'm learning, mitamol I'm stuck. Right? I'm trying to understand the Maamar, I'm trying to understand the Teves, trying to understand the halacha, melicha, Basi, I don't know where everyone's holding, yeah. And you just can't get it. The taz, the shach, it's something you're not getting it. Something, or someone trying to explain to you a concept, and it's like something's like it's klepnisht. And then you're stuck. You're trying to figure it out. You're breaking your head. You're speaking to your chavrosa. You're shiur. You're not getting it. And then, so either you think about it for a while, or maybe you even gave up, or sometimes you have to like give up in order to get it, or whatever. You're doing your thing. You move on to the next Maamar. And all of a sudden, as you're speaking about the concept, or as someone says a vart, or whatever, just randomly middle of the day, all of a sudden, like, one second, I just got it. Right? It hit me. Right? Sometimes you just get clarity. Now, where does clarity come from? Where do you get it from? Well, so we spoke about this a bit. We had one of the Maamarim a few months ago. Was it Avram Zakin, possibly? Right? So where does this clarity come from? Where does this idea hit you from? So Chassidus speaks about seichel. It says, so you have the seichel, the galui, the seichel that you're using, and then there is seichel hanel, or in another lashon, there's koyach hamaskil. Right. So what's the koyach hamaskil? Sort of the koyach that gives you seichel. So koyach hamaskil is the source from where these ideas come to you from. We're not talking about an idea someone explained to you, and all of a sudden, oh, you gotta give me a good mashal, and now I got it. He already gave you the mashal yesterday, or you didn't hear the mashal. All of a sudden it hits you. Or even without that, all of a sudden someone come up with a great idea. One day you wake up like, wow, I just thought of a great idea. Where does this idea come from? So you have sometimes based on Piskom and Shmaya, and you have a Shailas Cholim of Pashtos. Where does ideas come from? So this Koyach HaMaskil is sort of this like great reservoir of ideas, right, of Seichel, which you don't access day to day. Day to day, how much percent of our brain do we use? Very, very small percentage of our brain. Most of our brain is underwater, so to speak, right? It's like an iceberg. The tip is over water. You have where you access, where all of a sudden you have ideas coming from there. Now, what's going on in this koyach hamaskil? And do we have different koyach hamaskils? So in the seichel gully, we know that we're all very different. We all think differently. We all have different ideas that connect. Some people are more bali chassidus, some people are more bali nigla, some people have more practical brains, some people have more abstract brains. What about the koyach hamaskil? So what happens in the koyach hamaskil? So really, a lot of these differences that we have in the way we think about things and the things we gravitate towards and the ideas that talk to us more start off in our koyach hamaskil. Meaning it's not, you could say, just look, this guy learned a lot of chassidus, he knows more chassidus, this guy learned a lot more nigla. If he would have been around more, he would have known as much as him. It's not necessarily true. You can have someone learning chassidus a lot of years and doesn't, the language doesn't really talk to him. Or someone learning nigla a lot of years, or different, seichel, you just don't connect it. Why? Because already in the koyach hamaskil, which means in your potential, what you're capable of understanding, you're already in a certain seer, right? Certain people have very technical brains. Certain people are great in mathematics. Even though they never learned mathematics, they decide at the age of 30, I need a job, they become an accountant. In a year or two, they get it all great, and they're great accountants. You didn't learn math. Chinuch Ataras HaKedesh, yeah. But whatever. Because you get it. You have a certain kind of brain. You have a brain for numbers. You have a brain for building. You have a brain. You got Bachar Yeshiva struggles, can't learn anything, and all of a sudden, he's doing. He figures out he's making a lot of money in all kinds of industries, all kinds of businesses. He figured out Amazon. How's it check? Because he's able to understand different different areas. So everyone understands things different. Everyone's able to get things, understand different ideas. So that's sort of the seichel hanela. Meaning, right now, it's not about what I know right now, what I'm understanding right now, what I'm capable of understanding, right? And if someone knows someone else well, I'm able to. If you're able to understand people well, you're able to see not only what they know now, what they're capable of understanding. You tell a guy, you should be learning this. This is something that you're going to connect to, because this is what your koyach hamaskil is actually developed for. So then the shaila is like this. Okay, so someone that's able to understand chassidus, gets chassidus, but nigla more technical, it's hard for him to get. Or nigla, he struggles with chassidus. Or he's able to understand science, but he's not good with math. Or whatever. Everyone has their inyan that they're good with, and they're not good with. So what's going on over here? So are there like 20 different brains within our head? And some of us have 5 of those brains. Some of us can understand 5 different haskalas. Some can understand another sheva chachmas ha'olam. Some can understand another few chachmas. What is it? So there's no different brain. There's one brain. It's not like a person that's more developed has like 6 different compartments, right? It is more developed. The brain that you have is more developed and able to access different kinds of chachmas. So someone that can't get math. Some people, they hear numbers, they just like the brain shuts down. Some people hear numbers like that. It's Kabbalah. This is where it makes sense to them. So if I struggle with a certain chachma, does it mean that I don't have it? That it doesn't exist by me in any which way? No. I don't have it begilui, but it's there, and that's why you could have a husband and wife that both are terrible at math, and they have a kid that will be good at math. Or you don't have to go that far. When things get tough, and all of a sudden you have to crunch the numbers, the IRS is running after you, and you have to figure out. All of a sudden, you could figure things out that on a regular you can't figure out, right? Or what was it the question how those ladies are able to understand the deepest svaris, shivcha charuf, how they can understand the deepest svaris in the Gemara of the Tanam and Meraim. When it's negeya, the greatest ideas are able to come to anybody. And that's the etzem hachachma. The etzem hachachma, the etzem hakoyach hachachma, the etzem haseichol, that is b'shleimus by everyone. We all have etzem haseichol. But the way etzem works is that it's not begilu. We don't have access to it. In the etzem haseichol. Only very, very unique situations, in a time where your life is on the line, or things are very, very tough, or as we learned over there, through major yagiyah. Through major yagiyah, you're able to reach a place where you're able to access things the way you're in the etzem haseichol. And etzem haseichol is connected with the etzem ha'adam, the etzem ha'nefesh. And the etzem ha'nefesh by a person's b'shleimus. It's perfect. The chesronis we have, the miles of chesronis we have, are all in geluyim. In etzem, everyone's etzem is perfect. So in the etzem, we have the etzem of all the koiches. The etzem of chachma, the etzem of bina, the etzem of das. All the koiches, where they come from. It's not like there's a nefesh, and then there's like a whole bunch of tools the nefesh was given to work with. Chachma, bina, das, etzem. They all come from the etzem. They're all included in the etzem nefesh. That's the koiches aklulim benefesh. The koiches, the way they exist, they're included within the etzem nefesh. But because they're in the etzem nefesh, we can't access them. When do we actually start feeling them? When do we appreciate them? When do they become part of our expressed psyche, our revealed psyche? That's already the way they're already koiches nalamim, and then the koiches agloyim. We access them. So the etzem ha'oyer, so there's an etzem ha'oyer and then ispashos. These are the 3 levels. There's the gilui, the etzem ispashos are shaykh legilui. That's like already when I'm already accessing in the world of ideas. I'm already thinking of ideas, or even if you don't think about ideas, bepoil, where it's like, oh, I got it. Like you don't even get it yet, but like you already feel you're touching something. Something's coming. You're already engaging with the idea. But then before that, there's the way the idea is there in your subconscious. I don't have the idea right now, but I'm able to think about it. The fact that I can think about it, the fact that my temperament and my personality and my koiches nefesh are in a way. You think he could get it? Yeah, I think he could understand it. Him, no, I don't think he could understand. You can understand. You can't understand. Why? Because it's already in the koich hamaskel. The koich hamaskel of this person is already in a certain tzir. So that's like the first argument is special. And then there's etzem ha'oyer. Etzem ha'oyer, it's all here, but nothing's here. Nothing's here. The person has etzem chachma, he can't do anything. A little baby has etzem chachma b'shleimus. But for all practical purposes, he's a stickle brain dead. Yeah, he's in a good way. L'mayla mitamadas. Right? There's no actual gilui of the seichel, but it's here. But it's here be'etzem. Derech zeh, you have the same thing. Let's say in chesed, you have gilui chesed. You have a person. You say this guy's a isha chesed. What's a isha chesed? Now he actually does chesed. I know if I'll come to him, he'll help me. Why? Because I know his personality is in the way of chesed. But that's not chesed of the etzem nefesh. In the etzem nefesh, everyone has chesed for etzem nefesh. If not, you wouldn't be a human being. You can't just exist with gevura. Even the worst guy, the guy that the most angry guy on the block, that never smiled in 50 years, he has chesed and etzem nefesh. You might have to wait till a zman of great simcha or tsar or mesiras nefesh for it to come out. But it's there. Everyone has it. Ultimately, everyone has it. But sometimes you can't access it at all. So let's say when the Rav is teaching the Talmud. So the Rav is teaching the Talmud. There's different levels here of makif. We'll next time. There are the ideas that the Rav gives over to the Talmud, and even ideas that the Rav himself is thinking of. And then there's ideas in Chachmas Harav, the etzem Chachmas Harav, the etzem Seichel Harav, which not necessarily is the Rav accessing, not only in the Shiur he's giving, but even he himself, as he's thinking about the idea, he's not necessarily thinking on those terms, right? Because even the Rav is be'ein aroich, and he's talking about the deepest in Yonim, but, okay, so koyach hamaskil, so he's using all the potential that he has to think of an idea, but is there begiloi here? Is the Rav in a conscious way appreciating and thinking of ideas that come from the etzem hachachma shebenefesh, the etzem haseichel? Not necessarily. But now somehow, when the Rav now goes and gives a mashal, changes the terms of the idea that he's thinking about and giving over, and he finds a mashal, other oisius, a mashal for the idea that he's saying, in this mashal, not only is all the oimek that he's thinking of and his begili in his own brain when he's thinking about it, is he giving over to the Talmud. These ideas, the way they're in the etzem hachachma, shebenefesh, etzem ha'oyer, are being given over to the Talmud in the mashal, and the Talmud can appreciate it through the mashal, and that's the oitzer. There's ideas of kviyachol that Eibushar's etzem hachachma, etzem ha'oyer, that are kolol in the moyer, and l'chayra I have no way to be given over, because even by the Eibusher kviyachol it's not begilui, it's behelim, just like the etzem is behelim, the etzem ha'oyer is behelim. But through the mishalim, what's the mishalim? What does he say? Sipurim shebetayra. Right, so in the Farbrengen he speaks about a few things. He speaks about the Sipurim shebetayra. He speaks about the mashal Teiras of Al Shem Tov, small mishalim, small sipurim. Is this idea? The Sefer Zichroinus the Friedrich Rebbe wrote is this idea. In a way, the Maamar the Friedrich Rebbe wrote is the nimshal. The Sefer Zichroinus is the mashal. And there's things that, and the etzem ha'or we get after through the mashal. Another nekuda, a few weeks later, the Rebbe spoke and connected with the Rebbe said there's Rashi. Rashi al Torah is pshut lishal mikra. Chair is the most pashte inyan. It's not chassidus, it's not kabbalah, it's not even the deepest inyan of minigla. It's pshut lishal mikra. And dafke in pshat, it's a mashal. Dafke in the mashal is the deepest inyan. The Rebbe taught Rashi the year before, Tavshin Chafei. Then the Rebbe stopped it. Then the Rebbe said he's doing it for 1 year because the Ilam's not listening. The Rebbe finished, and then there was a lot of people begging the Rebbe to start again. Parsha Shmois, Shams Navarchim Shvat. The Rebbe started again after the Rebbe stopped Parshas Bereshis. And the Rebbe said that by the Farbrengen Yitzvat, it was a few weeks later, it was Shalach or Yisrael, the Rebbe said that Rashi is the same thing. Also, it's a mashal, Afghan this. The Rebbe also spoke about the Chassidus speaks about the hearts, the deepest in Yonim of Gilead Nefesh. Mitzvah Chassidus kochs in Ma'aseh B'Poel. It's not enough. You can't say Rachmana Liba Boy. It's not enough. And Dafke in Ma'aseh B'Poel, you get the etzem of Chassidus. In Yonim Shterz Chassidus. The etzem of Chassidus is in the mashal. So you see different Gemara the Rebbe brings to this idea, Dafke through the most simple and pashte in Yonim, we're able to reach the etzem haseichel, the etzem seichel harav, the etzem, and that gives us the oitzer. That gives us the koyach and the seif zman and golos, and we'll get into that how actually that works, and we'll get into the next Maamar as well. Okay.